Hello, and welcome to this special Father's Day episode of Across the Dinerverse, searching for the heart and soul of America, one diner at a time. How you doing? I'm John Murphy, a writer and producer on the CBS Science and Technology series Innovation Nation, which airs on Saturday mornings. Check your local TV guide for showtime. And I normally travel the country talking to everyday folks in diners about their lives, their jobs, their problems, and how they feel about America. But not this week. No. My youngest daughter, Cameron, pitched the idea for this episode where she interviews me about being her dad. And it's not pretty, okay? It's just not pretty, people, but keep listening at your own risk. But then again, maybe you'd like to become a patron of the podcast, where for as little as $3, you can ask me questions, send comments about the show, suggest diners I should visit, get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and content, and get access to me. That's right, me. I'm a Emmy-winning writer, producer, host, and podcaster. You want to start a podcast? Pitch a TV show? Need feedback on a script you've written, or just some simple advice and direction on how to start a career in media and entertainment? I can share what I've learned after 40 plus years in the business. So go to patreon.com/Dinaverse, become a patron for $3, and get an opportunity to connect directly with me. That's patreon.com/Dinaverse. So my birthday was last week. Thank you very much. And my kids came by the house to help me celebrate with my wife and mother-in-law who lives with us. And my youngest daughter, Cameron, suggested she interview me about being her father. And I said, why not? Because at the time she asked me, I had a couple of Cadillac margaritas in me and I wasn't thinking clearly. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. But I promise you, this is not a drunken podcast. We actually recorded this the next day in my dining room. So here we go. All right, so why are we doing this podcast?
I think you're just trying to find meaning in having children.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No, it's Father's Day this week.
It's Father's Day this week, and I thought it would be a great idea for some people to get to know more about you, but also kind of get your perspective on what it's like being a father.
Oh, you don't want that.
I probably don't. But being a girl dad, I for sure want to hear some perspective on that.
Well, first of all, I love being a girl dad. I didn't always want kids, but when I came around to it, it was because of a girl, and so I love being a girl dad. I love girl energy. I always have.
Do you think you relate more to like women in general?
I think I do.
Yeah.
Because when I was developing, I didn't have many guy friends, and
Yeah.
I wasn't cool enough. I wasn't a jock. I wasn't super, super smart. I mean, I had guy friends, but I really just loved female energy. And I think it's because they helped validate me. I could make girls laugh. I could tell jokes, and getting that response from them kind of gave me that foundation of, well, I got some talent. I have some ability. And so, yeah, I've always appreciated girls' energy, partly because my mom was so cold and distant, and I was always under her thumb, and she was very micromanaging and dominant, and just kind of my perception of her, which changed later in my life, thank God, but growing up, my perception of her, she was just a angry, mean, pissed off lady, but she was just always grouchy.
Okay.
And so for me to have a positive female relationship experience, I think I gravitated towards that to compensate and maybe overcompensate. In fact, I can absolutely say I overcompensated trying to attract female relationships because, I got into trouble in my 20s, Hey, it was after birth control and before AIDS. So, hey, everything's good, so.
I would definitely say that the way that I have gotten to know you as my father and the way that I see you and have a relationship with you now, I would say that you are written by women. And what that means is that you are so emotionally intelligent now that maybe not in your 20s,
No,
but
no.
now, and by the time that you had two girls, you were emotionally intelligent enough to connect with us. And, you had gotten married and gone through therapy and really dealt with the things with your mom that maybe you didn't receive as a young boy. So you were able to reciprocate that to your young girls.
Well, I hope so.
I would say so.
I mean, overall, do you feel your experience with me as your father was positive, in the middle, or negative?
Well, I'm not just saying this because I'm being recorded, but I will definitely say that, I have a lot of girlfriends, a lot of friends who their parents have gotten divorced. They don't have the best relationship with their dad. And I see you and I think I'm one of the luckiest girls in the world.
Aw.
I think we have a beautiful relationship, not only parent to child, but man to woman. Like you really have shown me what I deserve in looking for a man and what, emotional intelligence I'm looking for, the type of love that I would like to receive because of the way that you treat mom. And I think that so many women, unfortunately, don't have that. So even though you may not have had the best relationship with your mom, it taught you later on in life to be vulnerable and open and wanting that reassurance and satisfaction from women to the point where you show Taylor and I what we need.
That's your sister.
Yes, my older sister, yes. But you have shown us what we deserve from a man. And while it hasn't worked out for me yet, it certainly worked out for Taylor because I see a lot of you and her life partner.
Interesting, Max.
And Max. And, mom and I were actually talking about this the other day that the relationship that a daughter has with her father will set up her relationship standards for the rest of her life.
Oh, I agree with that. And that's why I will say, just not to interrupt your thought, but I will say I have always taken my role as a father very, very seriously.
I think you have. And I really think through your actions, it has shown that. Because even though, and we'll get more into your backstory, how you got into the entertainment industry, but you definitely traveled a lot. And I would think that that would have had more of an effect on me. But the way that you would come home from those trips and just, you always had stories to tell us and you were so excited when you walked through the door to see me and Taylor. I mean, literally, one of my fondest memories is hearing the side door open because I knew that Daddy was home.
Oh, wow.
And, Dad's home from a trip. Where did he go? Like, what presents did he bring us? Like,
Well, for you, it was always a snow globe.
It was always-
You love the snow globes.
I love the snow globes from around the world.
And I would just, my last day in wherever I was, it was a mission to find you the perfect snow globe. Wow, my dad went here and he brought this to me from Moscow or from Prague or London or wherever I was.
Yes, I remember my favorite. This one actually wasn't a snow globe, but my favorite, little trinket you brought back for me was a hand-carved elephant from India. I still have that elephant to this day, and I took it to probably 3 or 4 show and tells because it was so beautiful. And like the stories that you came home with from India, that's what was so beautiful about the relationship is because, even though you were traveling, you weren't gone in my heart because you would come home and share all of your experiences and spend the time with me and Taylor to tell us about them. And then we would get to hold on to these trinkets to remember that experience by.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad I never thought of it in those terms. I never thought that was, meaningful or impactful. But I think what you say truly highlights the fact that children watch everything.
Everything.
They see it, they're just always observing and downloading. So every single thing that you do every single day, from the minute you get up until you go to bed at night, you are inputting into your children. And I've always inherently believed that. That's why I took my job seriously. I, by far, did not do a perfect job. I made so many mistakes because I was wrapped up in my own crap. And sometimes the crap that I was dealing with, my demons inside, internal demons would like come out at the wrong time, at the wrong, it's like misdirected anger at you or your mother from my own arguments going on inside my head. So it took me a while to kind of unpack all that and work through programs and recovery to try to, to fix that kind of thing, and to try, not fix, because I'll never be completely fixed, but to understand it, to heal it, and to know that it's there, and to realize, oh, this is coming from this human filter of character defects of mine. I better check that or make amends or do something like that.
But that's what I think made you such an impactful father, because at the end of the day, we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
No parent is 100% prepared for having a child.
God, no.
No parent is perfect. There's no perfect way to raise a child. But what you did, what that was so impactful, was doing the work to work on yourself. So instead of, all of these things from your past, letting it define who you were like, let me go and work on myself so that I can be the best father and husband to my family. And that's what made you the best. And you're still continuously working on yourself to this day.
I'm still a work in progress, for sure.
But you're still in action. You're still working on it. And for Taylor and I to grow up in an environment where, not only you, but also mom, working in your own programs, that shows us that no matter what we go through in life, you can work through those situations and be a good parent because you're doing the work and you're constantly in action. It makes you the best dad I've ever known. I think a lot of your listeners would like to hear more about you, who you are, where you grew up, what made you want to get into the entertainment industry, how you eventually came to want children, and that whole story. So I would love to ask you some of those questions,
sure,
even though I know some of the answers, but really just, get your vulnerable side so people can learn more about you.
Well, first of all, how do you explain to people that my legal real name is not John Murphy?
Yes. So for those that don't know, my dad's birth name is Emmett Jones.
Yep.
No one in the industry knows him as that unless they're very close friends. But your stage name, I would say, is John Murphy.
Right.
So why don't you tell us, how you got into radio, was your first gig back in Nebraska, and what made you change your name?
Well, first of all, the first 5 years of my life, I really thought my name was Damn It, Emmett! Because that's what my mom used to say all the time. Damn it, Emmett! Jesus! Right. My mom was just not a very happy camper. And it took me a long time to realize that my mother was a child raising a child. She married my dad. She lied to my dad. She told my dad she was 21 when, in fact, she was 17.
Oh, my goodness.
Because she wanted to get out of the house. And then she had me when she was 18. So she was a kid raising a kid. But my name was Emmett and named after my father. I'm the third, by the way.
The third Emmett Jones?
Yeah. I'm the third.
Something to think about if I have boys.
There you go. And, I grew up in a very small town in Nebraska, born in San Diego, California, spent a minute in El Paso, Texas. My father worked for the JCPenney retail store chain. But eventually my dad got transferred to this small town in Nebraska, which was kind of a commercial hub for the rural farming community within like a 70-mile radius. So when I was in high school, my English teacher, he knew the operations manager of the local radio station, which was KICX. It's a 1,000-watt daytime-only radio station, which means that when the sun came up, you turn the transmitter on, and when the sun went down, you turn the transmitter off. And in the winter, we would turn the damn radio station off at 5:15 in the afternoon because the sun went down.
Oh, wow.
So it was a daytime-only radio station. So after 5 o'clock in the afternoon in December and January, it's like, there's no radio.
Oh,
you had to turn it off.
no.
But anyway, my English teacher knew the operations manager, and his name was Mike Manker. And Mike goes, look, we got some openings for weekend shifts. Do you know any kids who got a good personality, who can read, who might win a job on the radio? And he mentioned my name. He said, oh, this Emmett Jones kid.
Wow.
He's a crack up in class. He does good on his vocabulary, all that kind of stuff. And so I went down to interview, and they gave me the job.
Wow.
Now, this is a rural farming community. So we would sell advertising to the bank to sponsor the time and temperature every 15 minutes. The time is 4:15 at 68 degrees.
Yeah.
The time and temperature brought to you by the McCook National Bank. For all your banking needs, blah, 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 blah. We did cattle sales on Saturday from the West Cell Barn. We did funeral home announcements on Saturday mornings. We'd read the obituaries on the air.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we ran Paul Harvey. Then in the middle of all that kind of stuff, we'd play the hits of the 70s. And I would play these things off a 45 record. And I'd have to cue the record up on a turntable and fire between two turntables. Like if you watch the movie American Graffiti,
Okay.
and you see Wolfman Jack in the control room at the end of that movie with Richard Dreyfuss walks in, and he's playing these records on a turntable. That's what I did.
I have no idea who those people are, but continue.
Everybody, it's George Lucas's first film.
Okay.
Everybody
okay.
watch American Graffiti. Ron Howard is in it. Harrison Ford is in it.
Okay.
And, it's just a great coming of age film as kids graduate from high school and they start their lives, right? But my track in high school was to get in the Air Force and Naval Academy. I wanted to fly jet airplanes. I had the great opportunity, because my father was a private pilot, I had the great opportunity to start learning how to fly an airplane at the age of 15.
Well, right. What else do you do in Nebraska?
Exactly right. I mean, living in a rural area gives you lots of opportunities to try different things. I was taught by an ex-Vietnam pilot, helicopter pilot, and he was a crop duster and just a wild man. But he was a great pilot. He knew every inch of an airplane, and he started teaching me. I soloed when I was 16, and when I was 17 years old, I got my private pilot's license.
Oh my!
Flying Cessna 172s all across Nebraska, out to Colorado, and whatever.
I don't even think I knew how to drive my car at 17.
No, you didn't. I distinctly remember you were grinding the gears on your car.
To be fair, I drive a stick shift, so it took a long time to learn how to drive.
But now you're proud of that.
I'm extremely proud, but it's not flying an airplane at 17 years old.
I thought, okay, I want to be a fighter jet pilot. I want to be Tom Cruise in Top Gun before it ever happened.
Yeah.
I took every math class, science class. I got all straight A's on National Honor Society. I checked off every box you're supposed to check off to get the appointment into the Air Force or Naval Academy.
Okay.
Well, unfortunately, my SAT scores in math specifically were not up to snuff, and I didn't make the cut at the very end.
After all of that work.
After 4 years, when I did my senior SATs, my math comprehension just wasn't there. I'm not a naturally gifted math guy. Mm. And I got both rejection letters the same week.
Oh, no.
And I, was depressed most of the summer because of it. I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I thought, well, I'm doing this radio thing. Maybe I'll just go down to the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, and study broadcasting and journalism and just see what happens from there. So I put a little tape together of my on-air work at this radio station in McCook, and I sent it down to a big radio station in Lincoln, which is where the University of Nebraska is. And I got a call within 5 days. They said, we want to offer you a job. We think you get some potential here. Are you going to go to school down here? I go, well, I am now. And so I had a job ready to go, and I went down to school, and I enrolled in the broadcasting journalism program there at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. I worked at KFOR AM, which, by the way, was the flagship radio station that carried all the Nebraska Husker football games.
Big Husker fans over here.
Yeah, so I got to go to all the games and work on that, and it was just very, very exciting. And on top of that, I picked up an additional weekend job at the #1 top 40 rock and roll station in Omaha, which was the biggest market in Nebraska. Omaha's the big city.
Yeah. So those rejection letters was from the Naval and Air Force Academy were actually redirection letters.
That is correct. That is correct.
Sending you to Omaha.
Exactly right. And it's a blessing for me and for the good people of the United States of America that I did not become a flight officer flying a $100 million aircraft, because that's not my skill. I was not a warrior.
Yes.
God did not make me a military warrior. He made me a communicator and a storyteller.
Yes.
Which I really love to this day. So I'm doing these two jobs. The general manager of the Omaha radio station is called Sweet 98 FM, and I think it's still on the air there. I believe it's still on the air. It has Sweet 98 FM. they offered me afternoon drive. And I'm like 19 years old. And afternoon drive, the big time slots for radio are morning drive, that's the biggest one, and afternoon drive, when you get the commuters going to work and coming home from work.
Yes. And I would
And
say
if you,
that's when most people listen to podcasts now on their commute.
and I remember I said yes. I just said yes immediately. And I said, how much are you going to pay me? They said, I'm going to pay you $17,500 a year. And I thought, wow.
Was that a lot back then?
For me, it was.
Yeah.
I was living on, $100 a week.
Yeah.
I remember calling my dad, your grandfather, who you never got to meet, and he would have loved you, by the way, because you were such a kick in the pants. I called him. I said, Dad, I'm quitting college. What do you mean you're quitting college? Well, I got offered this full-time job at this radio station doing afternoon drive, Dad. I'm doing afternoon drive in Omaha, the #1 rated station in Omaha. He goes, yeah, so what does that mean? Well, that means I can maybe go to Chicago or maybe go to New York or Los Angeles or Dallas. And there's some radio guys that make $50,000 a year. He goes, that's not going to be you. You know how many guys make $50,000? Yeah, he just went on.
Okay.
So he had so much hope for me to be the first person in our family to graduate from college.
I see.
Why go to school to study something I'm being given the opportunity to do
Right now?
Right now. So I did it. And then, it took off from there. I mean, just the doors flew open.
Now, I would like to preface by saying, if I told you guys that I was quitting school, you would have knocked me upside the head too.
I said no fucking way.
Yes, exactly.
That would have been my dad.
Yes. So it's so funny to hear that, because you had an incredibly successful radio career, turned writer, producer, and now you're doing this podcast. You did not need that college experience to get to where you are today.
I will say I probably would have benefited if I would have waited just a couple more years, another year and a half, because I would have taken some business classes.
I see.
And learned how to understand, the business, the economics of radio, how to negotiate contracts for myself to benefit myself, right?
Right.
Probably taken more English and literature classes and writing classes and storytelling classes to just become effective, even a better communicator. I had a lot of failure during my 25-year career in radio because it was trial and error. I had to take a job that was outside of my scope or ability, fail and learn something, and then, transfer that experience into another opportunity. So
you didn't get that trial and error from writing papers in class. You got it in real life experience.
That's correct. Yeah. So in that regard, correct. I got practical real life experience that kicked my ass. Probably took me twice as long to maybe, achieve some goals that I wanted to achieve, but there's nothing better than actually learning from failure to move forward. Just to wrap it up real quickly. So I went from Omaha, Nebraska to my first morning radio show at KLUC in Las Vegas, Nevada, K-Luck. And then I went down to San Diego, where I met your mother at Q106. And then we moved up to Los Angeles. I was offered a morning opportunity at a country station in LA called KZLA in the 90s.
KZLA.
I have to be brutally honest in that part of my problems, as I said, in my 20s, I had emotional problems.
Right.
So I was getting all these great job opportunities, but I had such low belief in myself, low self-esteem. I felt I had that, what they call now, imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Which I didn't feel like I deserved to be there. So how do you cope with that? I had no coping skills. I wasn't seeing a therapist. I wasn't in a recovery program. I was doing all kinds of things, inappropriate things. And it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll at that time too. And this is the 80s. And I found plenty of that.
Yeah.
And I found plenty of women who were willing to go on that ride with me.
Yeah.
Married or unmarried.
Yeah.
And I was married at the time.
Right.
So I created so much havoc and so much upheaval in my life that I couldn't focus on the jobs that I was supposed to be focusing on and really honing my craft, getting better. I was more in the sewer of just the bottomless pit of trying to feel better, trying to feel good, and checking out through sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And
right. And what they call it today is like cheap dopamine hits.
Yes.
So the quickest way to find pleasure to make yourself feel better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that brings me to, while you were going through all of these different jobs and all of this, emotional turmoil, you were married when you were young. When did you meet Mom?
at Q106 in San Diego. She was on the sales staff.
Okay.
And I was still married at the time.
Okay. So how did that work out?
Well, your mother and I just we clicked.
Yeah.
But it started as an affair.
Mm-hmm.
And like all affairs, they get exposed. And because it was at work, it blew up inside the radio station. And, it just created havoc.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then my wife at the time had enough of my shenanigans, and she filed for divorce.
Good for her.
Absolutely. And my first wife, I can't say anything bad about her. In fact, I hijacked her life for about 8 years because she believed in me more than I believed in myself. Her first name was Linda.
Yeah.
And I married a great friend. We had so much in common. We loved traveling and the arts and music, and we didn't want children at the time,
Right,
and so on
yeah.
and so forth. But she believed in my talent. She saw my potential before I even saw it. I was so selfish and so needy. I hijacked this woman's life and married her, and I started cheating on her right away.
Obviously, no one wants to get divorced, but you learned so much through these mistakes. And I think the mistakes that you and mom made you want to get better because you clicked with mom.
Yes.
Not saying you didn't click with Linda, but you guys were just friends who were compatible. You weren't in love.
Correct. Your mother is the love of my life. Absolutely.
Right. So when you realized that you had all of these intense emotions for mom, when was it that you guys started to realize, okay, we both have our separate problems, but we're, the loves of each other's lives. How are we going to make this work?
Well, that didn't happen, unfortunately, until, after we were already married and already brought you and your sister into the world.
Oh.
People talk about, the 7-year threshold of marriage, the
Yeah,
7-year
itch.
Yeah, that type of thing. That was kind of real for us. Between the 7th, 8th, 9th years, we were really questioning, what's going on? We were holding each other responsible for our own happiness. So your mom was looking to me to make her feel better, and I was looking for her to make me feel better instead of examining our own stuff.
Yes.
And your mom found a pathway into a recovery program, and I saw almost instantaneous results, effective, positive change in her life. And I thought, I need to address my thing. And so I did my thing, and then we came together. And I will say for us, taking the focus off ourselves and putting God at the center of our relationship, that worked wonders for us. And we've been together for 33 years, married almost 30. And I love your mother more today than I ever have.
Yeah.
She's my best friend. She's my confidant. She's got my back. I trust her more than anybody else on the planet. Even though I say that, anytime she makes a suggestion, I'll fight it.
Yes. Because we are still human at the end of the day.
Right. I still want to call my own shot.
I think that, like we were talking about earlier, that is what has made you guys such impactful parents, because we all make these huge mistakes in our lives, especially in our 20s. That's when we're all kind of floundering, trying to figure out what the heck we're doing with our lives. I'm definitely going through that now. But you knew that your love for this woman was so impactful that you guys were going to find a way to make it work, but also realizing that you can't fully make each other happy until you're happy within yourselves.
Correct. Yeah. How can you love somebody else if you don't love yourself?
Exactly. And so both of you doing your own separate recovery programs and then coming together at the end of the day, especially when children are involved. I mean, I think that that's 100% the reason why you're still together and why you have been such incredible parents instilling this pathway for Taylor and I. So I am just curious to know, you married, Linda first because of all of the compatibility. But one of those things that you had in common was not wanting children.
Right.
So what was it that changed your mind and brought you to having 2 beautiful young daughters?
So your mother has a sister. She's your Aunt Dawn. She was going through a marriage crisis of her own, and they were almost on the verge of divorce. They worked it out, and when you work things out, what happens? Makeup sex.
Yeah.
Makeup sex. It's fantastic. Makeup sex is the best.
I don't need to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm still your child.
Does that like really bother you when you think about your mother and father being
No,
physically
I
sick?
love that you guys, after 30 years of marriage, are still so wildly attracted to each other. I just don't need to hear about it.
Okay, all right. So turns out that your Auntie Dawn becomes pregnant.
Okay.
And your mother and I almost broke up over the fact that my father died in a plane crash, your grandfather who you never
Yeah.
met. And I came back from his funeral and I walked off the airplane, and this is when you could wait for somebody at the gate. There was no security restriction. My
Okay.
mom was waiting for me at the gate, or your mom was waiting for me at the gate. And there was a guy walking off ahead of me whose daughters ran up to greet him at the gate and welcome him home from his business trip. And your mother goes, "Oh, that's going to be you someday. You're going to be a great dad." And I said, "I don't want any kids." I was still in that mindset. Plus, I was probably still emotionally grieving the tragic passing of my father. It was such a shock and such a
Absolutely.
surprise that I was still processing it. But I just was very curt and very just like, I don't want any kids. And your mother, just the blood ran out of her face. And we've been dating for like 7 or 8 months at the time. And she goes, I don't know what to say. And we walked back to the car and we started getting into this little fight. The fight escalated inside the car. She goes, "I spent 7 months dating you, thinking that we were going to have a future. And now you're telling me you don't want kids? Because I want kids. This is absolutely a deal breaker. In fact, get out of my car." And your mother kicked me out of the car, driving back from the San Diego airport at Hotel Circle, right in Mission Valley.
Good job, Mom. I would have done the same. Oh my gosh.
I think she did eventually come back around. She felt, I mean, literally, I was on the freeway with my bag. And your mom kicked me out. But she came back around to pick me up, and she took me home, and she said, "You better think about seriously what you're saying, because this will impact the relationship, because I cannot be with somebody who doesn't want kids."
And we love a woman that sets boundaries.
Right. I didn't want to lose her because I was emotionally needy, because now my
Right.
dad was dead, and I was struggling with my job at the time too. And in an effort just to keep your mom at bay, just to kind of calm her down, I said, "I'm not saying no completely. I'll just say that I'll allow myself to be open to it in the future." So that was enough to kind of,
Calm her down.
Literally, I think a week or two later, her sister calls and says, "I am pregnant. I'm going to have a third kid." She had 2 boys, by the way. And it turns out that she's going to have a girl.
Yeah.
And then, she gives birth to this girl. They named the girl Jillian.
And so you and Mom were able to stick it out through those 9 months
Yeah.
of Auntie Dawn's pregnancy.
We moved from San Diego to Los Angeles. I kind of got fired from my job in San Diego, and I came up to LA. I said, "I'm close enough to LA. I got to go to LA. My heart wants to be a creative force in Los Angeles, either in radio or TV, movies, whatever. I just got to find my way there." And I got a job as a traffic reporter. I mean, that's how bad that's how low it's like. Got a job as a traffic reporter, and then started working part-time.
Traffic's red on the 405 today.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And so it was a low point in my career. Your mom got a job at the country station as a salesperson. She moved up to LA, and your mom helped facilitate that opportunity to become a morning man at the country station in Los Angeles. And then her sister gave birth to Jillian, your cousin, and this baby, the magic of this child pierced my heart. I fell in love with this baby. In fact, I was the one telling your mom, "Let's go down to Orange County and see your sister. Let's watch the baby for the weekend, so she and the kids can go away and do something fun. We'll watch the kid." I took naps with her. I changed her. I walked her. And
you fell in love with her.
I fell in love with this baby, and your mom.
Yeah.
She saw that change and finally convinced her that, okay, I can marry him now.
Oh, and you had that relationship with Jillian, and God just blessed you with 2 little girls.
And I wanted to be a girl dad. A girl dad. And I got 2 beautiful girls out of it. Yeah, absolutely.
That is such a beautiful story. And one of my favorite things about that story is how you actually told that at Jillian's wedding a few years ago.
Yeah, I did.
There was not a dry eye in the house. How do you like being a girl dad?
Oh, I love it.
I would love to know, what is the best part about being a girl dad and what is the worst?
Well, the best part of being a girl dad is knowing that I get to model to you the type of men you should be striving for, men of
Yeah.
character that I have to hold myself up to.
Yeah.
You know, don't be a cheater.
Yeah. Yes.
Don't do like I did.
Yeah.
And I can be honest. I'm just going to be honest with you. Living that life was so empty and so painful. There's nothing good about it.
Yeah.
You know, the grass looks greener, but it's not.
It's not. I remember the first time I got cheated on in high school, and I just fell up. I mean, it was like my first, adolescent love. So it hurt the most.
Yeah.
And I remember we were actually up in Wyoming. It might have been for Jillian's wedding, which is just full circle. But I just fell apart sitting outside of the beautiful, log cabin. And you came out to me and you said, honey, this has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the fact that he is a boy.
Yes.
And that is when you
Yes.
uttered those words that you have been telling me since I was old enough to understand.
That was my mantra for you guys. And what was that?
That men are stupid until they're 30.
That's right.
And being 24, I see that 1000%.
Yeah.
All of the boys that I have dated, it really is true because, they think in their heads that the grass is greener on the other side. Oh, well, this will be easier. Oh, well, this girl, doesn't nag me about, or she's hotter, or
smarter.
She'll do this for me that she won't, or whatever it is.
Right.
You have just instilled such a confidence in me because of what you went through to know that it has nothing to do with my value and my character. And I truly believe that that's why I have been able to be resilient in dating. I get knocked down, I get hurt, and I feel those feelings, but then I'm back up and I'm ready to get, back on the horse.
Right.
Because I know that it doesn't reflect who I am as a woman.
Right.
And that is because, while you made those mistakes, it made you a great mentor and a father. Because you said, I know that this is wrong because I did this. I was this type of boy.
Yeah.
But now that I'm a man, I know that a man that loves a woman would never do that. While that has been, one of your favorite parts about being a girl dad, what would you say is your least favorite part?
I think it's certainly, the emotional swings as a teenager are really big.
Yes.
The age where you girls grew up, the social media onslaught at that time, you were coming of age right as social media was coming of age and you were being influenced by all that kind of stuff. That was really hard, especially I think for your older sister who just, swang with, what was being said and whether she was liked or not liked and all those type of things. So that was really hard. And it was hard to see you guys push back against your mother.
Absolutely.
And even though your mother and I were always united in that we would always present ourselves supporting each other, whatever disciplinary action we were going to take against you and Taylor regarding your actions and decisions and things, behind the scenes and away from you guys, we would fight about we should do this. I was more of a hardliner. I was like, let them suffer.
Yeah.
Let them suffer. No, we need to help them out. And
that I'm sure came from how you grew up with your mom.
This story will sum up my mother in a nutshell.
Okay.
I'm 11 years old. She's taking me somewhere. We had a second car, which is a 1965 rusted out Studebaker pickup truck that had a faulty latch on the passenger door. My mother whips around a corner at 25 miles an hour trying to get me to this appointment. I think it was drum lessons or something like that. And the door swings open and I fall out of the truck onto the pavement. Do the stuntman roll on the ground. She almost runs over my legs with the rear tires.
Oh.
And my mother yells at me for falling out of the car. Damn it, Emmett. See, gets back to the beginning.
Yes.
Damn it, Emmett. Get back in the car. Why did you freaking fall out of the car? We're late already. Get your ass in the car. Mom, the door's broken. Can we buy a car where a door works? It actually holds and latches? Get in the car. We'll talk to your father about it later. Now, shut up.
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard that story.
Yeah, that's my mom in a nutshell.
I love Grandma Barbie. May she rest in peace.
May she rest in peace. So my mother modeled who I was going to pick as a woman.
Right.
My first wife was also a very strong, independent woman. there's pluses and minuses with that.
Well,
We've had to
and
navigate those areas.
I would say that's exactly how. No, I get my strong will from mom. And so I understand why growing up with your mother, you picked mom, but it made me a tornado growing up because I saw mom being strong willed and she'd snap back at you and then you'd snap at her. And so now I'm like, well, this is what I want, so I'm doing it, and I don't care what other people's opinions are on it. And that always has its pros and its cons to
Right,
it, but
right.
I think that I'm the strong woman that I am today because of who you guys are individually and then coming together as a united front. So now that you've told me your, favorite and least favorite thing about being a girl dad,
Huh.
I'm curious to know in your mind, what is your best dad moment
Oh.
and what is your worst?
My worst. Well,
You can start with worst if you want.
yeah, let me start with the worst. I don't know if you remember this. It was Mother's Day, and your mother and I got into a huge fight.
How old was I?
I'm going to say both you and your sister were under the age of 10.
Okay.
And it was a horrible fight over money because and I still deal with it. I have, financial insecurity.
Okay.
We never had a lot of money when I was growing up. And I just, again, my mom was very, tight-fisted with money and things like that. So that's kind of learned behavior. And we fought in front of you. This is before we got into our own recovery programs and things like
Okay.
that and sought help and started working on ourselves and working on our own issues. And it was an explosive fight, so much so that your mother on Mother's Day left the house for the entire day. She just left, got in the car and left.
Oh my.
And you and your sister were devastated because
'Cause it
it's
was
Mother's
Mother's
Day. We're
Day.
supposed to go to brunch and go out and spend the day together, and you were just left with me. And I felt like such a shitheel for doing that and trying to make it up to you guys. But the fact that you saw and witnessed that
Yeah.
always just, I just felt terrible about that.
I can ease your pain by saying I do not remember that at all.
Okay, good.
I must have repressed it from the trauma, but I really don't remember that. Now, I will say that, I did witness you and mom's fair share of fights, but I think some of my favorite moments was seeing how you guys made up to each other after these fights.
Mhm.
I mean, when you're married for 30 years and you have children and it's your life, who else do you have to yell at? Like that's your partner. That is your life partner. You are going to disagree on things. And nobody's perfect. You would raise your voice, mom would raise her voice. It would be scary. But it was the way that you guys learned to resolve it that I think really positively impacted Taylor.
Well,
and
and I also think we came to a point that we could come to you and your sister, sit you down and go, we apologize.
Yes.
We were wrong to do that in front of you. I do think there is an important aspect to fighting in front of your children so they can see a positive resolution because that's conflict resolution, right?
Yes.
I think the key is to not elevate it to a point where it becomes dangerous, extremely hurtful, traumatizing, but kids need to see conflict and conflict resolution as part of their development.
Absolutely.
And your mother and I didn't do it very well in the beginning, but we've become much better at it towards the end.
You guys are incredible about it now. I mean, I was so young when you guys fought like that I don't really remember it. But from what I've seen
It'll
growing
come out
up,
30 years from now in therapy.
I actually have an appointment after this podcast. But, I never heard you guys call each other names. You never, said, used bad words to talk about each other. I never really heard the word divorce. Like,
Right.
I always knew that you and mom would come into the room where Taylor and I were, we shared a room at the time, and you would apologize and show us how much love you had, not only for us, but for each other. And that's huge. And that's not even a worse father moment. I mean, maybe for you.
Yeah.
What would you say is your best father moment?
Absolutely, without a doubt, involves you cleaning out your pigsty of a car. You use your car as a garbage can. That's one of
Still do.
I don't understand why. It drives me nuts. But I borrowed your car for some reason, and I was such a pigsty. I go, I got to clean this car out. And I'm cleaning out the wrappers and the Starbucks coffee lids and the straws and all this kind of stuff. And I come across this brown paper bag
No.
in the bag.
This is my worst father moment.
Okay.
For you.
I see this brown paper bag, and I open this brown paper bag, and it's filled with condoms. And all kinds of paraphernalia from Planned Parenthood.
It was all from Planned Parenthood. So it wasn't just condoms. It was... Okay, let me preface this by saying I was a senior in high school.
Well, that's the part.
I was trying to be as safe as possible. And at the time, you could go if you were, because I was still 17 when I was a senior in high school.
That's the point.
I know. But so you could go to Planned Parenthood and they would literally for free give you a bag of condoms, spermicide, birth control pills, and Plan B.
Yeah. So my initial reaction was rage.
Of course.
I was really like, oh, but I remembered through my counseling and all that kind of stuff that God is in the pause. Yeah. God is in the pause. So I literally took the bag and I walked around the block like 3 times.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And what God did in that walk around the block 3 times was tell me, and he whispered to me, he goes, who are you to be judging what she's done? What have you done? Let's look at your life, shall we?
Wow. I
had definitely sex with my high school girlfriends. A condom broke once, and I was terrified for about 3 weeks because, oh my God, I'm a junior in high school and my condom broke, and I've obviously had multiple affairs during a marriage, So, I mean, I have to give my daughter grace because I've done the same thing.
Wow.
I have done the same thing. So what can I instruct her in? How can I make this a teachable moment? And that's when I walked in to your room. I said, I found these. And then what was the first thing I said? I said, I am not mad.
Yeah. When I was having a heart attack.
Right. What was your reaction when I walked in with this brown paper bag?
I just knew exactly what it was, and my heart stopped. Because, I mean, for a teenage girl who has such a close relationship with her father, that is the last way I wanted you to view me. And of course, also, just to give a little backstory, I had gotten all that stuff as a precaution, and then me and my high school boyfriend broke up.
Right.
So I was like devastated beyond belief because of what I had done with him, and he still broke up with me.
Right. And you gave the best part of yourself away.
And then he cheated on me. Yeah. So I was just completely shattered.
Yeah.
And then my father found out. So I cannot even explain to you the way that I felt in that moment. But the way that you came towards me fixed it all.
Right. I think that's why it's my best dad's moment, because I said, I'm not mad at you, honey. I understand. I've done the same thing, but I think we need to talk about the realities of being a sexually active person and you being so young.
Yeah.
How can that, if things go wrong, if you get pregnant or something like that happens, it can totally upend the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so, obviously I had to tell your mother.
Of course.
But I had calmed down by then. So because I approached your mother calmly, she reacted calmly, and we all sat down for about an hour and a half and talked it out.
Yeah, we did.
And even though we were able to express our disappointment, we didn't crucify you for it.
No. In any way, shape, or form, shame me.
Right, exactly. I never wanted to do. That's the one thing that I thought was the critical moment. I could not make you feel bad about yourself for what had happened.
Yeah.
Because I had been given so much grace over all the bad shit that I had done. I felt I owed it to you to extend you the same grace that God had given me. And I think that was my absolute best moment as a father. And the fact that you texted me the next day, cried like a baby for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you were so loving and kind in your response to how I responded. So that was my best moment.
Yeah, and I will say that conversation, along with the trauma of my ex-boyfriend breaking up with me after I had done that, the way that you and Mom went about handling it, it made me so much more discerning in the way that I chose the boys that I would date.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, I mean, it just reminded me how special sex should be.
Also, I think you're the one who told me, or maybe it was your sister, but one of you told me that the world is upside down because we have sex first to find out if we want to date somebody.
Yes.
And that flipped my head out.
Yes.
That's the mentality of the millennials, is that you want to screw first to make sure that you're compatible, and then you can maybe start dating.
Yes.
And that's absolutely backwards. I'm just going to define it. I don't care what you believe in. Sex is a byproduct of a loving, considerate, respectful relationship that turns into love, and sex is a byproduct of it.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you from experience, being a sexual being with my wife in a relationship that is honest and authentic, and I have a clear conscience, is much more gratifying than a one afternoon hookup with somebody in a motel somewhere, or then I have to try and keep the secret.
Yes.
Because you're only as sick as your secrets.
Well,
and that secret will eat you alive.
It makes you feel good for about, a couple minutes, and then you immediately feel ashamed.
Yeah.
And I look at that now, I cannot believe that I had sex at that age. Like, I'm 24, and thinking about myself as a 17-year-old, I was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like a child. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but why was I making that big of a decision at 17 years old? Which, if you talk to other people, isn't even that young. I had plenty of guy friends who had already had sex at 13 years old, I mean, it's ridiculous. So being able to have that open conversation with you in my most vulnerable state, when you walked in with the brown bag after getting my heart shattered, I think really reminded me of the type of men that I should be looking for.
And the good news is that you will no longer be grounded at 25, and you're turned
25. Yes. In a few months, I will be able to leave my bedroom. Pretty much my last question for you is, for any fathers that are listening to this podcast, or new dads who have just had a baby, what would some advice be that you can give to them?
I really think, just based on my experience, the better you know yourself, the good and the bad, and the better that you can get honest with who you really are, the good and the bad, and learn how to forgive yourself for the moments of failure and falling short of the goal that you want to achieve, either as a husband and a father, or both. The more that you know and understand that, the better father you will be.
Yeah.
And I would also say that it's very critical to admit when you are wrong. That's the best thing you can show your kids. Like, kid, I made a mistake. I was completely wrong. I judged too quickly. I overreacted, and I apologize, and I'm sorry. I love you, and I'm sorry. And I think you also need to verbalize and physically show your children how much you care and love for them. Your kids need to hear, I love you. I am proud of you. I believe you. I support you, and I will always be there for you. Those are the key lines that every kid needs to hear sometime or multiple times during their time living in your house.
That was so beautiful. I literally started getting chills, but it's so true.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing your story and making me cry again, but just being the most vulnerable, authentic, and loving man I have ever known. And I love you.
And I love you and your sister, but I love you more.
I
No, that's not true. That's not true. Come on. I love all my kids exactly the same, even the ones I don't even know about. Well, that wraps up another episode of Across the Dinerverse. Happy Father's Day to all you dads, and congratulations on doing the hardest but most important job of your entire life. Theme music by Keith Brock and the Kings Who Rock. And if you'd like to support the show and possibly connect with me directly, simply visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/Dinerverse. You can join for as little as $3. Across the Dinerverse, always searching for the heart and soul of America, one diner at a time. Season 2 with all new diners and interviews coming your way soon. I'm John Murphy. What's your story?